So welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being on time. A couple of minutes, but that's my fault. So thank you for being back at 1:30. I'd like again to thank Qatar for having supplied or sponsored the lunch today. I saw a lot of conversations at the booths among participants and so on, so that's terrific. That's what this event is all about as well. We're going to follow, actually, I had a comment about the app. You know, I think most of you are back because you heard the signal on the app. But I thought to myself, as we're asked to put it on mute or turn it off, if we don't turn it back on, we don't hear the message. So my suggestion to you is to, when you leave the hall, yes, you can put it back on the normal mode, but when you come back in, you put it on silent mode. Does that make sense? Good, thank you. So you can hear the app to get back into the room. Okay, enough of this. Our panel discussion will move forward from the last panel when we heard about the next generation from the next generation. And we'll focus still on aviation careers, but from the student's perspective. And we'll be looking at what are the biggest challenges to employment? What are the career aspirations? What are we looking for? We heard about technology perhaps taking over jobs in a few years. What are the aspirations? And perhaps more lofty, but as important, what are the dreams of the younger generation? Can't think of a better person to bring us into this brave new world than Suzanne Kearns. Suzanne is the Vice Chair of the NGAP Outreach Working Group, and Suzanne, we thank you very much for that. We know how much work is involved. And Suzanne is also an Associate Professor who teaches, researches, and writes about aviation at the University of Waterloo, next door in Ontario. She has published 4 books and a number of articles and specializes in aviation safety, human factors, and teaching methodologies. Of particular interest is that Suzanne is the creator of the joint ICAO Waterloo e-learning course entitled Fundamentals of the Air Transport System. And something else to watch out for is her upcoming textbook, Fundamentals of International Aviation, to be published by Routledge early in 2018. So without further ado, Suzanne, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for joining us for this session. As you mentioned, I'm a professor, and one of the privileges of being a professor is I get to work with young, passionate students every single day. And it's one of those things that it really does inspire you to keep what I'm doing fresh, but also to do the best we can for these young students, because they are driven into aviation with passion, and they do really rely on us as professionals to guide them into their chosen careers. So throughout this summit, there have been, and I think there will continue to be, a lot of great conversations about the next generation, but the goal of this session is to talk to the next generation. We want to learn more about what drives them and their peers into aviation careers, some of the challenges and obstacles that they have witnessed along the way, and some insight into what has led this group to be successful when many others have challenges that block them from continuing with an aviation career. So I'm very proud to share the stage with this group, and we've had several calls in preparation for this. Keep in mind, many of these young people are speaking publicly for the first time, so this is a very big stage, and so I'm really proud. We have some excellent representatives, all the way from our first speaker who has just finished high school, all the way up to some undergraduate students and some graduate level students from a variety of aviation careers, some from piloting, from engineering, and law. So I will introduce each speaker very briefly before they speak. Please refer to the app for their longer bios, but for the sake of time, we want to make sure that we move between them expeditiously so that we can have as much time as we can for some great questions and answers at the end of their talks. So our first speaker is Rudy Egeileh. Rudy has successfully earned his glider and power pilot licenses through the Air Cadet program and was recently awarded a very prestigious Chairman's Award. So we're really excited to hear him speak, and Rudy, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Suzanne. Like Suzanne introduced me, my name is Rudy Egeileh. I'm 17 years old. I am a pilot. I'm a glider pilot and a power pilot. And all of this thanks to the Air Cadet program. Before starting, I just want to state how much it is an honor for me to be in front of you today and talk to you about this wonderful program. The Royal Canadian Air Cadets program is a program that is offered to youth between the age of 12 to 18 in Canada. And it's a genuine way that I'm presenting to you. It's a model to recruit and attract young students that will become our future and the future of aviation in Canada. I would like to start with two quotes from famous ex-Air Cadets. The first one is from Lieutenant Colonel Maurice Carmichael. Maurice Carmichael is the first woman to fly with the Canadian elite snowbirds. Lieutenant Colonel Carmichael also became the first ever female pilot to command the snowbirds in 2010. Stating her, "Being part of the Air Cadets as a teenager provided me with an excellent foundation for my career in aviation and with the Canadian Forces. I had the chance to be initiated in flying and learn about leadership, discipline, and aviation. Taking part in the various activities gave me the opportunity to develop skills and personality traits that are required and used every day in my present career. Interpersonal skills, public speaking, reliability, discipline, and assertiveness. I was positively influenced by the friends I made and the mentors I had." Following, Chris Hadfield is the first Canadian to walk in space and served as the commander of the International Space Station. He says, "I dreamed of spaceflight. Watching the first humans leave our Earth to walk on another planet was a young boy's dream. Ignited, I clearly knew what I wanted to do, but I had no idea how to get myself there. Growing up as a farm boy, that looked great to me, but I needed to learn how airplanes worked and how to fly. The Milton 820 Royal Canadian Air Cadet Squadron had recently formed, so I joined and grew up with them. The lessons I learned there I still draw upon daily. Self-discipline, teamwork, technical competence, flying, and leadership. I know full well that it has been the Air Cadet experience that has allowed me to fly so high." So these are two great quotes from famous Air Cadet leaders in our world that have grown so far in the aviation industry, and I hope and I'm convinced that every single citizen that joins the Air Cadet program will eventually build something great. The Royal Canadian Air Cadets was established in 1941. It has been initially a program to help World War II. It was to form pilots in a quicker and easier way. However, one of the misconceptions we have today when we speak about the Air Cadet program is that it is a program to make recruitment in the military easier. However, it is not what we think it is. It has become very different, and it's not the goal to recruit any more pilots for the Canadian Forces. Today, we total around 456 squadrons, and which count up about 23,000 cadets. Did you know that 1 in 5 private pilots in Canada is an Air Cadet, and that 67% of airline pilots began as an Air Cadet? So it's definitely a young start. We see cadets that start at the age of 12. It's clearly a very, very young age. However, once you start, you have endless opportunities. The Royal Canadian Air Cadets is a partnership between the Department of National Defence, the Army, and the Air Cadet League of Canada. Its aim is to develop in youth the attributes of good citizenship and leadership, to promote physical fitness, and to stimulate the interest of youth in air activities of the Canadian Forces. And the motto of the program is to learn, to serve, to advance. Once again, this whole program is free, and there's absolutely no cost to any single cadet that wishes to pursue his career and start as an Air Cadet. So we see, hence, the first part of when we talk about free education and access to flying for everyone. This is it. The Air Cadet programs offers free aviation education for free. One of the ways that the Air Cadet program uses to attract young citizens is by holding what we call the Aviation Day. In 2016, this year marked the 75th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Air Cadets, and to celebrate this anniversary, the Aviation Day was held at St. Hubert Airport in Montreal. There was a lot of activities that every single cadet could enjoy, as familiarization flights, static aircraft tours. There was kiosks from all the members of the industries, air traffic control, aircraft maintenance, flying, airline industry. All of them were here to talk about what they do and to interest the youth in careers, potential careers that they could have in aviation. There were guest speakers and a lot of activities that could interest youth. Imagine being a 12-year-old, going to school and going for a weekend, the aviation day, coming back and telling your friends, hey, what did you do for the weekend? It's like, oh, I played video games, I played with my friend, I played outside. And you go up and you say, hey, I went in the Griffin and I had a helicopter tour, and I know that when I want to become 20, when I'm going to be 21, I'm going to be a helicopter pilot for the Canadian Forces. I'm going to be an aircraft technician. So these kinds of opportunities are offered for free to every single citizen that is between the age of 12 to 18 in the Air Cadet program. Now the more fun stuff. So once you become 16, we have regional cadet flying training centers all across Canada, which are flying schools to air cadets that wish to complete their glider pilot license. We train on the Schweizer SGS 233, and the largest number of glider pilots in Canada actually come from the air cadets. It's 6 weeks of intensive training during the summer for free. And after the 6 week, you obtain your glider pilot license from Transport Canada. Now you say, does it end here? Does a cadet pursue his glider pilot license for free? What after? What is there after? We talked about attraction and we talked about giving free education and access to everyone, but how do you move forward? Well, after you've obtained your glider pilot license, there's no obligation, but you could stay in the program as a retention program. You could every weekend go fly and act as a mentor to other cadets, bring them flying on a weekly basis. So me as a pilot, every weekend I can take up passengers with me and show them the beauty of flying. And hence, I was flying once on a weekend and I brought a 12-year-old girl with me. She was flying in the back. And after the flight, I said, do you have any questions? She's like, no, thank you very much. And I asked her, do you want to become a pilot? And she said, no, yes. So when I feel that, we're making a difference, this is what counts in the Air Cadet program. It's not all. After you've become a glider pilot, you can become a glider pilot instructor. So my instructor, when I was 16, he was 18. So he was just 2 years older than me. He wasn't my instructor. He wasn't someone that I'm paying because it's free. He was my mentor. Every day for 6 weeks, he would teach me how to fly. And he was an air cadet. Did you know that the Air Cadet program is the only program in Canada that Transport Canada allows to get paid without a commercial pilot license? So at 18, you could work for a whole summer as a flying instructor and you don't even need a commercial pilot license. So it's definitely an experience of a lifetime. After, I also a private pilot, thanks to the Air Cadets, and it's a 7-week summer course. I flew Cessna 152, so it's definitely also a great experience to become a private pilot. As retention programs, the Air Cadet offers awards and bursaries even after you've become pilots. They offer summer employment as glider or power instructor, but also as normal staff. There's a lot of proficiency courses that are added and teaching and mentoring opportunities. For example, at my local unit, I teach ground school. So I teach the theory classes to fellow cadets as a mentorship position that wish to pursue the glider program. Now, we've talked a lot about flying, but there's not only flying that are associated with the Air Cadets. There's a lot of other careers that can start with the Air Cadets. One of them is the aircraft maintenance course, which is a 6-week course that they have cadets actually be hands-on on aircrafts, repairing them. Imagine being 15 years old and being hands-on repairing aircraft. It's a great initiation. I've also had many fellow friends that did this course and told me, I want to become an aircraft mechanic after that. There's also the airport operations course that relates all careers that are linked to the airport management courses and the advanced aerospace course, because Air Cadets is also about space. In conclusion, the role of Canadian Air Cadets creates an interest in aviation at a young age. I've had someone told me, wow, you're lucky, you're 17, you're a pilot. I said, I'm not lucky. And as one of the Roman philosophers once said, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And this is what Air Cadets gives you. It gives you the preparation until you receive the opportunity. Not only this, it offers free education without no obligation, but proposes a retention program to whoever wishes to pursue his career in the Air Cadets as a flying instructor or as a summer instructor staff. On top of all of this, it gives opportunities to receive a handful of skills in leadership, citizenship. So the Air Cadets is not about recruiting people for the Army. It's about making better citizens and promising the future for aviation in Canada. Thank you very much.
Well, I have to say, some of my favorite years as a teenager was when I was an Air Cadet, and so I can share that enthusiasm. And when we're having our coffee break and we're having discussions about how do we ignite the passion for aviation in youth, I think we just need to replicate Rudy and send him out in the world, because he is a bundle of passion for aviation far beyond your years. So thank you. So next we're going to invite Andrew Osinski and Jenna Lee. Both Andrew and Jenna are from the University of Waterloo, where I teach. They are enrolled in their bachelor's degree in science and aviation. And so that includes also completing their commercial multi-engine instrument pilot licenses. So I'd like to welcome you both to the stage.
Thank you, Dr. Kearns. Delegates, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we will be continuing to speak to you today about aviation careers from a student's perspective, but now about piloting.
So as it was said, we will be speaking about piloting. It will specifically be the Canadian civil student pilot's perspective. And we will be talking about our career goals and dreams, as well as setbacks and barriers that we've faced and overcome.
Now, first of all, who are we? Well, I'm Andrew. I'm in the final month of my undergraduate degree at the University of Waterloo. I hold a commercial pilot's license and a multi-engine instrument rating, which, as Sue mentioned, were obtained through my university's joint program.
My name is Jenna, and I am also finishing my last term at the University of Waterloo in science and aviation. I too hold a Canadian commercial pilot license with a multi-engine instrument rating. Earlier in the fall, Andrew and I conducted an online survey that consisted of roughly 15 questions that asked student pilots in Canada why they chose to become a pilot, what opportunities they knew about before they began their training, where they currently are in their training, where they want to be throughout their careers, as well as what are some negatives and setbacks and barriers that they've had to overcome. Students from Mount Royal University, Sault College, the University of Waterloo, and the Waterloo Wellington Flight Centre responded to our questions. It should be noted that all of these programs end in the same results of flight training, however, they do differ from each other. They range in 2 to 4 years and offer different educational components, being an aviation degree or diploma, and have various levels of funding. All of the students expressed their happiness to be listened to and were very eager to share.
Now, the majority of our students were partway through their training holding a private license with some or no ratings attached. A very small amount were just finished their training holding commercial licenses, and some were just beginning as student pilots. Now, why did we personally get into aviation? Well, I chose aviation for the same reasons as many others, for the travel, the culture, and the good view out of the window. It's also not a standard career, and I thought it would be more interesting to me on a day-to-day basis. I chose to pursue university while flight training because I always had wanted to go to university, and this was a great opportunity for me.
Initially, flying was not an obvious career choice for me. In my last years of secondary education, I wasn't sure what I wanted to be. All I knew was that I wanted something with variety and opportunity and to have the option to experience a new thing every day. Looking back on the experiences I had, I realized that I had fallen in love with airports and airplanes after moving away from my hometown. Going to an airport and getting on an airplane meant reconnecting with family and friends that I hadn't seen in a while. Once I realized this, flying began to seem like the only career choice for me.
What about our survey respondents? Well, they echoed those sentiments. Many had not lost their childhood dream to fly or had come back to it after exploring different post-secondary options. Some just love to fly or are technologically intrigued by these machines that take us into the sky and are excited to see our industry grow. It's also seen as being a rewarding career, offering travel, adventure, and opportunity to those in the industry. Most of our survey respondents had no mentors in the industry, no parents, family members, or friends. They were the first to choose this career in their group.
These are a few of the quotes that we pulled directly from our survey. And as you can see, many survey respondents are very young when they first discover their initial passion for aviation. As Andrew mentioned, some people hang on to this dream for their entire life, and other people come back to it in their last years of secondary education, or even when they've been out of school for a couple of years. They do remember and they realize that they can become a pilot. This passion does usually stem from some sort of exposure when you're younger. This might be going to an air show, or taking an introductory or discovery flight, or being able to visit airports and see airplanes on a regular basis. We also asked students what opportunities they knew about before they began their training. And the pilot shortage is beginning to garner some attention. People are recognizing that the pilot shortage is happening and that it acts as a tipping point for them to enter the industry. People are becoming aware that it's an advantageous time to enter, as their careers will advance at a much faster rate than is typical in aviation. If you ask anybody about flying, the number one job that will come back is obviously airlines. Everybody knows about the somewhat glamorous life of a long-haul pilot. The introduction of cadet fast-track style programs in Canada has begun to act as a motivator for many people to enter the industry, as they realize that they'll reach a large airline much faster. Very few people mentioned knowing about flight instructing or military flying. Specialty air service that's particular to the Canadian North or rural Canada was mentioned very briefly.
Now quickly, what exactly do we mean by a specialty air service? Well, using an online tool, I've overlaid several different countries on top of the Canadian North, and that's just the northern half of our country. The population of that area is only just over 100,000 people, many of whom live in 3 major centers. There are several very small communities that are only serviced by aviation. In one particular example, a student at an elementary school in the north might take a snowmobile across a frozen river to get to their elementary school during the winter, but in the summer when that river flows, they have to take a helicopter. Now, what are the traditional career paths in aviation in Canada? The top model is likely familiar to most in the audience. That would be that of becoming a flight instructor to build your flight experience before moving to a regional carrier and then a major carrier. The Canadian option we'd previously discussed is illustrated below. That would be working a ground operations job at a specialty air operator. Often in the far north, you could be in the office or loading bags until a spot opened on the flight line. It's important to note that a lot of flight experience is being built traditionally in these first jobs. Now, what about the upcoming changes? Well, the Canadian ground operations are slowly fading out of style. Students out of flight school are more able to get right into a flying position at these specialty carriers. Further, flight instructors are spending a lot less time as a flight instructor before they can move on to a regional carrier and then a large airline. So a lot of the early career time building is now being spent at a regional carrier. And finally, the addition of these cadet-style fast-track programs puts flight school graduates, typically with 250 or so hours, right into a regional carrier or large airline.
We asked students where they see themselves 5 years after graduation. And as you can see, the majority of people expected to be at an airline of some sort. Most of these people, it was a regional airline, but some people did say that they wanted to be at a major airline at this point. Less than 10% of people still wanted to be at a specialty air operator, and really notably, nobody wanted to be a flight instructor. This is vastly different from even 4 years ago when Andrew and I began our training. At this point, it was common to spend 2 or 3 years working on the ground. Therefore, by the time 5 years rolled around, you would still be gaining flight time at the smaller operator. It was a similar route for the flight instructors, where by the time 5 years rolled around, you would also be building time. This is one quote from an individual in our survey, and he illustrates exactly how much uncertainty there is for many students for where they will be after 5 years, professionally and personally. Some people would like to be focused on their family lives. However, the majority of people are career-focused. Current students are hoping that they will also be financially stable at this point, having been able to pay off their student loans. Typically, aviation is seen as having a really long-term investment, and students are hoping that this will be a shorter-term investment, being that in 5 years. Professionally, most people are willing to fly nearly anywhere, as it's recognized that 5 years after graduating, you're still taking stepping stones to the rest of your career.
Now, why aren't more people getting into aviation and actually starting their flight training? Well, there's a misinformation or complete lack of information from guidance professionals and guidance counselors at secondary schools. It's also a large financial investment. In Canada, at least, the cost of flight school could be between $50,000 and $100,000, which could be paid for in student loans, or in my case, if you have very nice parents, thanks. With the same amount of money, a student could go to law school or medical school and have a more certain career future. The lack of stable hours and industry instability are also seen as a turnoff for some people. What I see to be an adventure of a career path, not knowing where I might be, others see as a downside.
Personally, I was discouraged from being a pilot. During my secondary education, my teachers and mentors and guidance counselors all asked me if I was absolutely sure that I wanted to be a pilot. They asked, have you thought about becoming a journalist or a doctor, and offered other more common academic careers. These people had no knowledge about the industry and were unable to help me retrieve any information about a post-secondary institution that would help jumpstart my career. This can be a major deterrent for many people not being taken seriously and not having any help finding information about the industry. It sends potential pilots down a career path that is typically more academic and is, well, more common. Sorry. We asked students also what their biggest obstacles were once they began their training, and by far it was the large financial demand of their flight training. However, the pilot shortage is also now beginning to be felt by students in flight schools. As flight instructors rapidly move on to a regional carrier, students are beginning to feel like they're only a tool on an assembly line and that they're not an actual person learning how to fly. The student also has to change flight instructors, and at this point, the student has to reestablish trust and adapt to the new instructor's teaching styles. This creates a more stressful environment and a longer lasting training, which can also end up being more expensive. As we also only talked to flight schools that offered an aviation degree or diploma, students had to balance an educational requirement alongside their flight training. This also led to time management issues.
So now, what were the hardest parts of training for the individuals we surveyed? Well, most were troubled by exams, tests, time management, and that's all generally hard for students in any industry. Flight training and ground school and industry information were actually the least difficult. Now, by far, everyone nearly had some financial trouble. The hardest part of learning to fly, studying flying, or whatever it was none of those, but in fact paying for it all. In one particular example, a star student's family at our flight club had to remortgage their family home in order to pay for her flight training.
Like many things in aviation, flight training can also be rather cyclical. Finances and this flight training can trap students in a rather nasty circle. A student will begin their flight training and eventually they run out of money. At this point, the student has to take time off to earn that money that they need to continue their flight training. Depending on the amount of time that they've taken off, they may discovered that their skills have degraded. And at this point, they have to retrain those skills that they had already once been adequate at. This creates longer training, as the student will then continue their training and then eventually run out of money again.
So now, what are our personal dreams and goals? Well, when I started this program, I expected to go to Northern Canada, as we discussed, or elsewhere, which I thought would be an adventure. Of course, given these new cadet-style programs, I would happily take one of those if I was given the opportunity. Afterwards, I'd like to settle into a stable position, maybe in the training or management department.
Similar to Andrew, I also fully plan to go to Northern Canada for a more venturesome start to my career. However, with the addition of these fast-track programs, I would gladly take one of these given the opportunity. However, I don't see a bad choice with either option. In the long term, I would like to have a career and fly with a more reliable, stable, and predictable schedule with a major carrier.
And what about our survey respondents again? Well, as I'm sure is no surprise, the overwhelming majority want to end their career at a large airline. Some would like to do some crop dusting specialty work, charter, or medevac work, and those were typically rural students who found that those positions would bring them closer to their home. Military remained a goal for a select few, and a very small percentage mentioned that they wanted to get into management or training at an airline, but were very passionate about that fact.
Similar to where students want to be 5 years after graduation, there's still much uncertainty for where students want to end their careers. The students we talked to rarely had an allegiance to a specific airline or location. Many people are just happy to be flying a larger plane nearly anywhere in the world. However, some people are very specific, and one very determined respondent decided that he would end up in Hawaii, and wouldn't we all like to end our careers on a beach? So we also asked, what makes training worthwhile? If you have to put such a large investment into it and jump through all the hoops in our training, what makes it worth it? And it seems in general, flying just gives us a sense of peace that cannot be found anywhere else. It offers this feeling of freedom that truly cannot be found anywhere else other than the air. I personally do agree with this. Becoming a pilot offers a lot of variety and the opportunity to learn and experience new things. There's no way that one day will be just like another, and you're given the opportunity to grow as a person every single day. It's a common sentiment among pilots that if you become one, you never really have to grow up. Sure, you have a career and a job, but it's not really work. It's fun and it's rewarding and definitely worth it.
Nearly every survey respondent had something to say about the view out of the window. After overcoming all of the struggles that they'd had in their training, they were still in awe of the career that they'd chosen, and they were sure that it was a great one. A certain Canadian measure of success is the view out of your office window. If you have a very good view from your office, you're said to be very successful. In that regard, nothing can beat an aviation career.
In the absolute simplest terms possible, our generation of pilots think that it's one of the best careers you could possibly get into.
Thank you for listening. We hope this has given you some insight into the challenges and goals of our generation of piloting students.
So thank you, Andrew and Jenna. I just met these two about a year ago, and I've been incredibly impressed with their intellect and their professionalism. And we're going to have Q&A hopefully at the end, so please do keep that in mind if you have questions that have come up. But just sort of to get your mind thinking, they brought up a really crucial issue that's starting to heavily impact us here in Canada, which is a shortage of instructors. So I know there's different models in use around the world, but in Canada, our most junior pilots become the instructors, and then as those instructors build experience, they move on to the airlines. But what we're finding is that progression now is sometimes even less than a year. So these instructors are barely building up expertise in instructing before they're moving on to their next role. So that's an enormous challenge. And just to put it out there, if you have any friends who are from the medical community or who are lawyers, tell them that in aviation we take our most junior people and make them the teachers, and you will see quite a surprise reaction that it's at a certain point our industry is going to have to pause and reflect on why we teach them this way, why we rely on these junior people to be instructors, because over time that pool is going to get smaller and smaller. So I'm like to introduce you to our next speaker, Mitchell. Mitchell is about to complete his Bachelor's of Electrical Engineering degree from Concordia University and is planning to continue on to work as a Master's of Aerospace Engineering. So I'd like to welcome Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Suzanne, and thank you very much for having me here today to speak to you. I'm extremely excited to give you my words of encouragement and my perspective on the aviation industry. So my name is Mitchell Lichocki. I'm a final year bachelor student at Concordia University here in Montreal. I'm studying in electrical engineering, specializing in avionics and control systems, and I will be continuing next year to pursue my master's degree in a similar field. A little bit about me. I've worked a couple internships. I've worked at Bell Helicopter, ABB, and CAE. I'm the VP of Operations in the Emerging Young Professionals of Air Montréal, which we will get to a little bit later. The VP External for the Concordia Institute of Aerospace Design and Innovation, and I just recently joined an experiential learning advisory board at Concordia University with the objective to improve hands-on learning for students in our university and to better prepare them for any industry that they wish to enter, but particularly the aerospace industry. A lot of people ask me how I came to be interested in aerospace, how I devoted my career to do so. This really stems from the good fortune that I had of having multiple family members, particularly my father, worked in airline travel. And we got to travel multiple times a year, or once or twice a year, on vacations to exotic places in the Caribbean, in and out of airports, on and off of airplanes. And as a young child, it always wowed me. I had to marvel at these massive beasts of the sky that could carry hundreds of people for hundreds of kilometers to the most exotic destinations. And I always wondered, how on earth is that possible? When I started university in electrical engineering, I thought there was no hope of an aerospace degree. It's all mechanical engineering. And then I realized that at Concordia we had a avionics and control system specialty, which I wholeheartedly pursued, and it was a very, very easy transition. So today I'd like to talk to you and give you my recommendation or my opinion on what I consider the 4 pillars to the aerospace industry. I'd like to make suggestions, if you'd permit, to how we can better improve the aerospace industry, especially from a student perspective, and how we can better integrate the students into that industry. So I'd like to start with what I find to be the most important aspect of this industry, being the students. The students, and I hope there are a lot of you still here with us this afternoon, play a pivotal role in the development of this industry. And it initially stems from your interest in the industry. So some of the methods that we had found at Concordia, and I myself particularly, are through these student associations. So CIADI and the Emerging Young Professionals of Montréal are 2 great examples of this. The Emerging Young Professionals of Montréal is up-and-coming association that we're making, where a student representative from each training center across Quebec, whether it be university, mechanic training, pilot training, the cadets are involved. We have a representative from each university sit on a board and make contributions as to how we can better prepare our students across the province for the industry. What does the industry need? We're going to be hosting events, conferences, site touring, networking events to really open that line of communication between everybody. Some other events that we plan are, as I mentioned, site touring and networking. One of the ones I just held recently with the help of Montréal with Concordia was 4 sites that we had visited with 30 students on a school bus. Before we got on the school bus at the university, I asked the students. They were all interested in aerospace because they knew that that's what we were visiting. But I asked them if they had heard about the companies and if they had any intentions of following up with an application. They said they were more just along the ride to see what it was like. They didn't know much about the companies and they wanted to just have an experience a full day out. Following the return from that event, they were all wowed by it. We got to go and see all of these major players in the aerospace industry view their products firsthand. Students got to get involved. We got right into the engines and we looked at what they were building. They got to see real avionics firsthand and talk to the engineers and the sales reps and get to know the challenges of their company and that industry. And following that, all of the students wanted to make applications to pursue careers at all of the companies that we visited. Some other points would be international experiences. I was recently sent to the 2017 Paris Air Show to represent Concordia University. And it was so stimulating and so motivating to be there at this massive air show where everybody around the world who's involved in aerospace is there and wants to get your feedback and wants to be involved and build those connections with students and grow the industry. Next, I'd like to talk about the Educational Institute's initiatives. It's extremely important from an institute standpoint to encourage the student creativity, encourage them to build these associations and to collaborate together, to put what they learn on paper and in textbooks into practical devices, whether it's rockets like at Space Concordia, UAVs where they compete all across North America with other universities. And it's fun, good competition that encourages them to get their feet a little wet, get their hands a little dirty. Industry involvements as well, to encourage industry to visit your location. Encourage networking events in your building. Have guest lecturers attend and teach maybe a law class, an aerospace law class, or an engineering course. Really get the students to get it from a different perspective than just the professors. And another point is to keep the student wants in perspective. That goes just in line with the Experiential Learning Advisory Board that I've been invited to at Concordia. I'm the only student on the board, but it was important for them to keep a student within the decision making. Where is the school going 5-10 years from now? I won't be there to see what fruit develops, but I'm definitely there to be involved and give them my opinion and keep that communication open between what the population that you're serving wants and what you think they want. Another point is the industry initiatives. So it's extremely important that the industry aids in all these internship programs, aids in recruiting. They want to have students be a part of the environment. It's, I believe somebody had mentioned in the first panel that a lot of companies these days are asking for a minimum of 3 to 5 years experience, and it's becoming extremely difficult for students to find those 3 to 5 years of experience. So developing these internship programs and communicating with the students and bringing them in while they're young and maybe inexperienced, but they'll grow and they'll appreciate your company much, much more than if you were just like everybody else. To motivate students as well, interact with them, showcase your company, or showcase the industry, open your doors to them to come in and view what you're doing. The primary goal in the site touring that we had done with Concordia was we had companies coming very often to the school to talk about the company, but students just saw the same faces of the same recruiters and didn't have a feeling of or a connection with the company. So by bringing them into your place of operations to show them your products really, really stimulates them and gets them interested. And to challenge them. Too often I'm hearing, especially as of lately, where students are working these internships and they're not challenged. They're doing administrative works. They don't feel a sense of importance. They don't feel like they're serving some purpose or achieving some goal within the company. So it's really to keep them challenged, involved, ask for their opinion, put them on projects where their design and their implementation will make a difference. Of course, it's important to have some oversight to make sure that it's appropriate and it works, but to make them feel like they're having an impact is very, very important. Another thing that we do at Concordia is some case studies. Perhaps your company wants to be involved in this recruiting. You want to get a name out there. Maybe you have a company that has an issue that they're trying to resolve. You could present that to university students and present your problem, and you could give them, some of them range in 1 day, some of them a few weeks, these case studies, but the students have to form teams, usually diverse teams, engineering, marketing, accounting, finance, come up with solutions to that problem. And then you present it to a panel of judges and they evaluate a winner. And essentially, your problem gets solved for very, very cheaply. The final point I'd like to talk about is the importance of these government initiatives. Government is the regulating oversight of everything that happens, and they play a huge, huge impact on how the aerospace sector or any sector is going to grow and develop. And here in Canada, we have a lot of money that gets put into research grants and subsidies for internships, and I think that is an extremely effective way at getting students exposed to this industry and motivating them. It assists an industry to hire interns, it motivates students to get that experience and to continue their education. My master's degree, I'm hoping I'm going to be submitting an application for funding to pursue research for businesses in Montreal relating to avionics. And that's the kind of work that really helps to stimulate and grow the aerospace industry. And a final point would be the international opportunities to encourage and to facilitate those transfers of students, whether it's studying abroad, bringing foreign students in to study at your institutes, or working as well, working partnerships. That's some work that I'm involved in as well at Concordia. Is our exchange program at Concordia is not strong at all in terms of the engineering faculty, and it needs significant improvement. So we're starting to really push those relationships with other universities to get those connections made and to encourage the transfer of students. So my perspective on the industry is it's really this elaborate combination of government, industry developers, the students, and the educational institutes. And I believe that we all play an extremely important role in the development and advancement of this sector of the aerospace industry. And I think that while we have done a great job thus far, I think there's still a lot of improvements that can be made, and I look forward to working to achieving those. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mitchell. Now, what I find striking when I listen to members of the next generation is how they create their own opportunities to mentor each other. And I think if you listen to our panelists, and you can sort of see that as a common theme, that when there aren't opportunities we've created for mentorship, then they seem to take the initiative to do it themselves. So thank you, Mitchell, for everything you do to support other aviation students. Our next speaker, Marios, is completing his doctoral studies in aviation law at the Institute of Air and Space Law at McGill University. And we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you, Professor Kearns. Good afternoon, everyone. So, as per my introduction, indeed, I am a lawyer in training, specializing currently in aviation law, in airline liability, and like many of my co-panelists, I'm also a commercial pilot with an instrument rating. So, the perspective that I would wish to offer in this discussion would basically be threefold. The first one would concern why I consider aviation to be appealing as a sector, and what unique attributes there are to it compared to other industries that make it stand out. The next one would be about potential challenges that may be faced in trying to join the sector, and also building up from a lot that my co-panelists have said. And lastly, raise a couple of joining opportunities that I think alleviate these challenges, and that also make aviation appealing as a sector for someone to take their first professional steps. So I think we can safely conclude from the discussions that we've had so far that this is indeed a passion-driven workplace, whether it comes from a pilot's perspective, whether it comes from my side, from a lawyer's perspective. Everyone seems to be attracted to airplanes and to the notion of flight in one way or another. I believe it is also the one question that none of us can answer as to why that is the case. We sort of assume it to be. And and this also applies, I suppose, from my perspective. Some of my colleagues are also pilots themselves, even though their primary training would be legal in character. Others simply just have an inexplicable attraction to aviation. But putting the sentiment aside and also building up on a couple of the things that we heard earlier today, I would still think that despite its challenges, it would be a safe bet. The truth of the matter is that we are living in a global economy where there is a lot of interaction, interconnectivity, and the more tangible or physical manifestation of that would be the actual need to connect the world. And this is what aviation did, this is what it has been doing, and this is what it will continue to do in the future as we move forward. And in such background, the service, what we are offering at the end of the day, is not something that will wane in interest or in need. And in addition to that, because of that inevitably global nature, and because of the statistics that we have also seen earlier today, it has a promising growth trajectory, and it does seem like a safe horse to put one's money on when it comes to making career planning, exactly because looking forward, there is a lot of promise in the service that we offer. There is a lot of commitment by many industry stakeholders from many different sides in expanding this industry and in growing, and I suppose in that end it is a trajectory that it would make sense to follow. Another thing which, in my experience at least, both as a pilot and as a lawyer and other capacities through which I have interacted with the industry, is that it's a very thematically diverse industry. Even when we look at this panel, we've heard from pilots, from professors, from engineers, now we're hearing from a lawyer, and the truth of the matter is that there is just, unlike other sectors, a lot of variety in terms of the training that one can pursue, but also the ability to switch sides. So many of us are commercial pilots, but at the same time we're engineers, we're academics, we are lawyers. And it is also the case that even from my legal perspective and from my legal training, it is not the case that because you've studied law, you will inevitably pursue a career as a lawyer, but rather because of that thematic diversity and because of that thematic interconnectivity, as it were, there is a lot of potential and opportunities from transitioning from one's area of training into a new area. And it is certainly, as a whole, aviation is certainly a sector whereby it would not be the case that one's background becomes irrelevant for the further steps that they take, but rather there is a lot of incremental value in every step and in any professional transition that is being made. And building on that, it's also the fact that there's a broad skill spectrum. We've had many airmen who've moved to more managerial positions or to more scientific positions, and it is certainly the case that in addition to other skills, social skills, technical skills that are required in many other vocations, in aviation we do also have a very thick layer of knowledge and education that goes behind it. And from the other perspective, looking at it from the perspective of science, of technology, it is one of the fields where many cutting-edge developments do take place. So, and again, that creates a challenge from and makes this industry interesting from a variety of perspectives. I mean, it's obviously the case for the engineers who develop these new stuff, but it's also of interest for the lawyers, and when they consider and get involved on how these developments are going to be regulated, it is certainly of interest to the technicians who will have to maintain and work with these machines and all these new technology that is being infused into the industry at a constant basis. And additionally, it is a global and international sector. One's perspectives always get broadened the more they interact with things they have not been exposed to. And aviation is certainly a catalyst for such international and enriching exposure. Now, in relation to the challenges, I suppose that there is an inevitable tension between specializing in an aviation discipline, whether it's some sort of engineering, law, economics, or finance. Aviation does have specialized groups for each one of these areas, and from the perspective of a young professional, there is always a decision on whether they need to specialize and sort of lock themselves in to what would be more of an aviation-related professional potential versus remaining a generalist, one that can be absorbed in many different sectors of the economy. And from my side, I did find that it was beneficial to keep a balance. And that balance can certainly be enriching as you move forward, even when it comes to joining the industry itself. Even, for example, in our case, which is aviation law, there is just an infinite variety of subspecies of law and sub-disciplines in which one may specialize, but it would certainly not be the case that this is what they should do, exactly because they then narrow the odds of joining the sector. And at the same time, I think it is also beneficial in order to overcome the challenge to try and maintain a broad awareness. And as I said before, I still think that the industry is very interdisciplinary and interconnected. So in a way that the lawyer cannot be oblivious to the economic challenges and the technological developments that take place, equally an engineer would need to be aware of certain basic elements of laws and regulations or of economic challenges. So maintaining that broad awareness, I think, would be a key first step to avoid locking oneself in high specialization. And at the same time, as is the case with all other careers, building a generally transferable skill set would take one a long way, because at the end of the day, aviation, just like any other industry, is a business. And it does still require the social management working skills that go in any other sector. And as I said, these are not unique to the sector, and they're not insurmountable, because one can always approach their training and approach their education in a way whereby they do not get jammed in, as it were. And for that reason, I think that indeed in every challenge does lie an opportunity, because the more one tries to expand their horizons and to broaden their horizons, they still become a potentially better and distinguished employee. And the last thing was in relation to the joining opportunities that are being offered. And I think the starting point, and perhaps that's why we are all here today, is because we have realized that we are an industry with longer-term human capital needs. And in order to accommodate and to feed on those needs, we are one of the leading industries in taking incremental steps of looking forward and in planning how to satisfy these needs in human capital and in human power. And I think that we're quite, again, distinguished in that respect, in the broad spectrum of opportunities for entry that we offer. And of course, the industrial placements and the internships are quite unique. And again, they do span across a very wide variety of disciplines. Many major airlines have internships and apprenticeships for areas ranging from engineering to finance to the business aspect to law. And equally, many airlines, at least in Europe, where on which perspective perhaps I'm speaking from, they have even started reinstituting training programs for air crews and for flight crews, whereby they either place a bond requirement or they facilitate the training so that trainees can graduate with a multi-crew pilot's license and immediately transition into the flight deck of a medial haul aircraft. And that would also go hand in hand with the flying activities. And as a concluding thought, It is also a sector whereby it allows people to either join it from the industry itself, but also from the academia. There are many academic programs specializing in aviation in many disciplines. I happen to be doing law, but we've heard from engineers, from pilots, from human resources scientists. So, and in that respect, it offers this multiplicity of academic disciplines too. So I suppose that would be my perspective, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Marios. Very many interesting points. So our last student speaker is Chenlu. She holds a Bachelor of Engineering degree, a master's degree in civil aviation, and she is currently a postgraduate student in air traffic management. She is currently working as an intern here at ICAO. So I'd like to welcome Chenlu.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. I'm pleased to be able to welcome you young professionals to ICAO and NGAP. It's my pleasure to be here to share my civil aviation experience with you. And before my story, I want to introduce myself to you. My name is Chenlu, and there are some labels for me. Now I'm an intern of ICAO, and at the same time, I'm a postgraduate student of civil aviation flying University of China, and my major is air traffic management. But I'm not always a student who is learning civil aviation. Before that, I got my bachelor degree of engineering. Then I provide 4 keywords for you to make more clear for my presentation. There are civil aviation, opportunity, education, and challenge. Firstly, I'd like to introduce some characteristics about civil aviation. The 3 points are also the reason why I choose to be a member of civil aviation. Firstly, civil aviation is an international industry. Look at this map. I believe all of you can find your country, but now you are sitting here in Montreal. It's civil aviation itself means international industry. And as for me, for example, how can the Chinese captain communicate with the Canadian air traffic controller? And what kind of flight routes are the Chinese captain followed? The Chinese rules or the Canadian rules? But with this kind of differences between countries and countries, ICAO established the same language standards for people from all of the world, holding different cultures, different language and rules. Then I collect some data from passenger handled for the top 3 international airports in the world. They are Atlanta International Airport, Beijing Capital International Airport, and the Dubai International Airport. More and more people choose to take airplane rather than any other kind of vehicle because it meets the rapid development in recent years, and it is the reason why we have almost 100,000 daily flights and numerous civil aviation industries. Besides, with the rapid development of such an international industry, there are more opportunities for our young students. If you are already a civil aviation student, you plan to learn this kind of majors. You can be a pilot, you can be a maintenance or air traffic controller or the dispatchers. But if not, maybe you are interested in engineering or sometimes economics or laws. You can also be one of us. You can be an officer of ICAO or any other international organizations, or you can be a safety inspector, or you can be a professional of navigation and construction of flight procedures. As for me, except the characteristics I mentioned before, I have also influenced a lot by my family. Actually, my parents have worked for civil aviation for almost 30 years. And as you know, Chinese children always have a really close relationship with their families. So I have got more chance to know more about civil aviation when I was a little child. So combine the two reasons together, I choose to accept the education in Civil Aviation Flight University of China, which is the biggest and largest university in China about civil aviation. And as I mentioned before, I was learning engineering for almost 4 years before changing to air traffic management. And a lot of people asked me about, is it worth to abandon engineering? But actually, the knowledge you have learned can never be abandoned. The logical thinking I have gained before the civil aviation makes me more easier to learn the civil aviation knowledge, and the communication skills help me to join in some research projects with my supervisor and classmates. The two pictures are the areas for the different airports in China I have drawn before. During the process, I always use annexes, documents, and sharps of ICAO, which is the specialized agency to establish the international standards. So I began to wonder where are these documents come from, and with the desire for the knowledge, I catch the opportunity to get into ICAO. And with the background of air traffic management, and I passed 2 different kinds of interviews of Chinese government and ICAO. Now I'm an intern of ICAO. And to be honest, the life here is more interesting than I expected before. I get the chance to listen to the expert meeting, and I get knowledge and new technology about civil aviation. And I participate in the best party of ICAO, which makes me get more closer to the different cultures and from all over the world. The experience here and the knowledge I have gained in university makes me more clear about my career. As a student who is learning air traffic management, I plan to be an air traffic controller in my near future, with including 50% of technology skills and 25% of innovation ability and 25% of communication and cooperation. But as a student, there are still a lot of challenge. I have to improve my superior judgment, and for young students, technical skills are really important. Besides, as an intern of ICAO, I also should improve my problem-solving skills. And as a woman, there is also some challenges. According to the data, only 30% of students in CEFUC are women. So maybe compared with males, female appear lack of confidence in this technical area. But actually, in most aspects, women show the same abilities as men. So there is no reason for young ladies to give up our dream. Finally, I provide 2 internship opportunities to you. I believe the future of the civil aviation belongs to you, and it is really a good time to join us. And thank you for listening.
Chenlu, thank you very much. I hope all of you, in listening to this representatives from the next generation, like myself, are maybe leaving a little bit more inspired by their passion, their enthusiasm, and their commitment to aviation, even at the really earliest stages of their career. But I think for many of us in the room, because we are current professionals, hopefully we can take that and think about it as a responsibility, that all of us have a responsibility to do what we can in our roles to create pathways so that these young people can find their way into joining our industry. So we do have time for questions, so I'll hand it over to our moderator who will facilitate the questions for our panel.
Actually, we'll do that together. Okay, Suzanne?
Yes, sure.
Tag team?
Absolutely.
The old and the young? No, I didn't say that. Yes, thank you, because we'd like questions from the younger generation. There are quite a few of you in the hall, and we'd like to know your impressions, your questions, your comments, and so on. And I think we have one already, so if you could raise your hand and push the button. You see a red light? There we go. Please, thank you.
All right, good afternoon. I want to thank all the panelists for your perspective. It's really interesting to see all the different aspects of the industry being highlighted by young people. So thank you all for that. My question is directed towards Andrew and Jenna, and by extension, yourself, Professor. You spoke a little bit about how the Canadian environment is changing in terms of flight training and the pipeline, and how pilots are progressing from training into regional carriers into larger airlines. Is there any incentive or any motivation or any mechanism where those retiring out of the industry at the end of their flying on the line career to come back into the flying schools and mentor and support and to develop skills for the next generation? Or is it really depending on the younger generation to train those just behind them and then move on forward? So I'd appreciate your thoughts on that, if you have any. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but thank you.
Just testing. Is good? Okay. Very good question. What we found is that there are some career flight instructors, in particular at our flying club, people who have been flight instructors their whole life or who have left the industry and have now come back at the end of their career as flight instructors. Those typically had never left for the airlines. The other thing that's happening is that maybe the mid-career type people are sometimes coming back to teach the ground schools or the simulator portions of our training. They're not really coming right into the flying perspective of the flight instruction, but they can do the ground schools while they are actually still flying the line at a larger carrier.
So just as a quick follow-up, one of the challenges we have here in Canada, and I don't know if this is global or if it's just the way we are in Canada, is that for some reason the instructor role, even though it's one of the most valuable links in the chain from pilots being students to being professionals, it's regarded as sort of like a pit stop on somebody's career. There are very few people, very few pilots who regard themselves as professional instructors. And I think, of course, I'm very passionate about aviation and education, and so I love teaching, and I think it is a discipline in and of itself, and the reality is the pathway doesn't really pay enough for people to make an entire career out of it, that it's not uncommon for pilots now to have $100,000 in debt, and they get a job as a flight instructor, and they're making less than $20,000 a year. So quite literally, the manager at the McDonald's down the street is making more than they are in their first flying job. And so we haven't created it as a sustainable cycle where people are going to choose that for the longer term. But it is something that, when we talk to senior pilots, we often do ask them, well, what about coming back to teach? But at that point, those pilots are making very, very good money, and instructing is a challenging job, and it's a skill set in itself. So just because you're an amazing pilot, it doesn't necessarily mean you're an amazing instructor. And so I think as an industry, we are challenged to think about how we can promote the instructing skill set as a respected profession that supports everything that we do.
Do we have any other questions? Yes, down here, please.
Hi, so Alexandra here. I have a question for Mitchell. So I believe the work you've done in Concordia, it's fantastic, and actually it resembles a lot what I'm doing with IASA in Ireland. So my question would be, have you thought to replicate the work you currently have done so far on a national scale?
I've thought about it. It's a little bit intimidating because it's only been about a year now. 2017 since I've started really getting into it, and I think that I'll take the Concordia Institute of Aerospace Design and Innovation, for example. The committee that was in charge before I got involved wasn't very strong and efficient at getting these objectives to see something fruitful develop. So it's really been this year that we've really turned a sharp corner and got students to be involved and generate a lot of interest. So I think right now it would be tough, but I think as the name and the objective in itself starts to grow, it's something that I think would be very, very valuable nationally and internationally, really to grow that mentality to as many people as possible.
Again, the reason I prompted that question is I have met just the last half an hour, a couple of young professionals or students here, and they were thinking to do something similar to IASA in Canada. So I think they should connect with you then, perhaps, and expand the idea further.
Absolutely. If anybody is ever interested in, it could be collaborating here in Montreal or here in Quebec, or it could be to get any advice or to collaborate for you to advance the similar project wherever you are in the world. I suggest that you reach out to me, and we can work to accommodating that and achieving the same goal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the left here, please. Thank you. You press the button next. There we go.
Hello? Oh, okay. Good afternoon. Kate Lattice with Aurora Jet Partners here. And first of all, thank you very much for your presentations. They were absolutely wonderful. Now, my question is directed towards Andrew and Jenna, but any of you, please feel free to respond. Now, I think, one of the few people here who work in business aviation. So what kind of surprised me was that in your survey results, nobody seemed to mention business aviation. Now, I just wanted to know, throughout your career and throughout the interactions you've had with the students you've asked about career goals, was business aviation ever mentioned? And if so, do you think more could be done from our perspective to promote the industry?
So part of that might be due to the survey that Andrew and I asked. It was more geared towards flying careers and assuming that the students would continue to fly after their graduation.
Could you just clarify if you were meaning the business of aviation or things like corporate flying?
So I'm talking business aviation, and private flying. So there would be flying careers involved as well.
Okay. So I think the business aviation side of civil aviation, as opposed to scheduled airline type flying, is kind of unknown. Many people don't consider that, at least not at our stage in our career. And typically, at least in Canada, I know that particular style of aviation really demands a lot of experience from a pilot. And so a pilot could be, I don't know, 5 years into their career before even being able to apply for that kind of position. So it's not really on the short-term sight of a lot of students.
Yeah, and I would just agree with that, is that many people don't usually think about charter flying or business flying because it's often something that what is known about it is that you have to have a lot of experience, and that it's it's a job that does require that experience, and then it usually goes to people that have already been in the airline industry and they've been flying for airlines for a while, and then they go to business aviation after that. So that's why it's not really thought of as a direct career prospect for the students.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Do we have another question? At the back of the room, way back.
Way back.
Thank you.
Hi. Thank you all for speaking. We have a question, is that the aviation is a system that connects different fields and areas, and we have heard from different companies, organizations, universities lately. And our question will be, from a student's perspective, how do you think can these organizations, companies, universities work together more efficiently to provide, for example, education or opportunities for young aviation professionals? Thanks.
Thank you for your question. I think the biggest factor in response to that question is just having a clear dialogue between all parties involved. That's something that we try to do, especially with the society that I'm part of, the Emerging Young Professionals of Montreal. We try to be that voice between the industry and the students, and we try not to interfere with the educational institutes in the sense of telling them what to do or trying to replace them, but really just trying to give them a support and a feedback from the industry to tell them if, for example, if in my domain in avionics, if a company says, well, the students coming into avionics are really lacking software skills, well, then we would relay that message to students and to the educational institutes and specifically inform them what languages are lacking in terms of programming. Maybe we would even hold workshops to encourage students to come either at a small fee, free of charge, something like that that's really achievable to get the students involved and to learn those technical skills. It doesn't have to be you don't have to have a bachelor's in software engineering. They just want you to know that moving into the position that you have that technical knowledge. And so I really think to answer your question would be just a clear line of dialogue between everybody involved would help dramatically.
And I think on that note, it's not important to have dialogue just where it's needed. Even having dialogue that says these students are prepared is great feedback for educators and students and everyone involved. It doesn't just need to be supplementary that your students need to know this. If they're great students and they're being and they're working very well at a particular company, well, let the educator know that they're doing a good job.
I think that's something else that we can do as students ourselves is often we see this with some of the graduated students is that once they're in the workforce or the industry for a little bit, they do come back and give feedback on, oh, this is what worked for me and this is what didn't work for me throughout my education or my training. And that's also a really useful tool because it's coming directly from somebody who experienced the program for those educators to work with, and they know exactly then where they can fill in the gaps.
Actually, the picture I have showed before is a good example because it is a program that cooperates with our university and the Air Traffic Management Bureau in China. So I guess this is the best opportunity for our students and the students from university and students from high school to know more about civil aviation. And there is another example that I am an intern now, and I joined the program that cooperation between the Chinese government and the ICAO. So this also is a good example for your question. Thank you.
Any other question? We still have a bit of time. We have one here. Please.
Okay, so obviously teachers are...
Press the button next to the speaker. Good.
There we go. Cool. Sorry about that. Yeah, so obviously teachers are some of the most important people just for furthering knowledge onto just younger generations, for keeping an interest in that. And as someone who is a CFI applicant right now working on that, it's a little disheartening knowing, that the pay is not really going to be that great, the benefits are not really going to be that great for that particular path, and that I'm going to potentially need to be in that for a while. So I guess for someone that's been in that situation for a while and been like around a teaching environment for longer, what do you think is a step to kind of remedy that, to make it so that career flight instruction is more of an option for people? Like, do you think unionization or otherwise?
I think in North America, we have a history that sort of guides the way we do things. And I think if we look to Asian markets where they have cadet programs and cadet training, where the instructors in those training institutions are well paid and very experienced and respected, that I think we have been in North America we've had the luxury of not having to worry about it because we don't want to make the price of training more expensive. So we don't want to have to pay instructors more because that cost gets passed on to the students, and the students are barely affording it as it is. And so we've got to the situation now where many students who then progress into become an instructor are willing to almost work for free because they know the value of the hours, right? I'm willing to accept $16,000 a year because I know that it's a stepping stone, and I know that these hours have a lot of value in them in my career. But then, of course, it does push people away from considering it as a profession. So I would suggest that here in North America, we can look to the emerging markets who have kind of jumped ahead of the traditional pathways for pilots and created more of cadet-style programs, also linked with educational institutions like colleges and universities. I think we're going to have to move closer to that direction to fill that gap. And hats off to you for becoming an instructor. Of course, this is where I put my nerd hat on, but when you look at learning theory, teaching is one of the absolute best ways to learn. And so, it's an important step for pilots. Like, it really does play that crucial role where they've established competency, and now they're moving towards expertise by reinforcing their knowledge by passing it on. So I think that it's a valuable skill set for pilots, but it is something our industry is going to have to look at supporting so they are paid fairly for the work that they're doing.
We've seen some successes in the United States. We do have a critical pilot shortage, particularly for the flight instructors. So we've had to change our ways because of supply and demand. So some of the things we've been doing is partnering with industry, such as some of the major airlines. And the airlines now hire the instructors while they're students before they're ready to work for the airline, and they help to pay for some of their education. They offer them medical benefits as well as travel benefits, which is very attractive when you're a college student. In some cases, those travel benefits also go to the student's family. Another thing that we've done is we've started offering to pay for the master's degree of the flight instructors. So it's twofold. We've raised the pay and the benefits, making it more attractive and helping them stay longer. And additionally, we've started a program where they can actually become tenure track aviation specialists, which is similar to a professor position. However, their role is just to flight instruct and teach those courses. And then as they progress, they can actually support their family and pay off their loans. So again, these are some things that are working, and it is just because we have such a shortage.
That was Lori Brown from our panel this morning. Thank you for those additional comments, Lori. Any other question? Here on the left, please.
Hi, representing Concordia University here. I would just like to shed some light on what is ICAO's position when it comes to jet fuel.
Could you speak closer to the microphone, please, so we can hear you clearly?
Be interested to know what kind of programs and funding the ICAO is giving towards more greener alternative fuels when it comes to private aviation travel and commercial aviation travel, and if there is any going on at the moment.
I don't think we're in a position to answer that question very well right now, because I think we're sort of talking about the student's perspective. But certainly ICAO has many environmental initiatives with CORSIA and carbon neutral growth and all sorts of really exciting things happening to support the future of aviation. But I don't know that we're in a position to answer that question right now, unless.
I would invite you at the reception later on in coffee break to grab some of the ICAO people and ask them. We have a question here on the right, please.
Yes, hi. My question is related to the cyclical nature of the industry. So being a young professional in aviation, the airline and aerospace industry has seen a lot of historical ups and downs in terms of fluctuations. So do you guys think about that when you're just about to embark in your career in aviation or aerospace?
So in my case, I did the flight training portion of my piloting, and I also completed a university degree at the same time. And I think that kind of further education is quite important for people, because if the industry turns sour, as it has previously, then someone with a different experience might be able to go into either a different job within aviation, or if they aren't available, if those aren't available to them, have a career in a different field while they wait for the aviation market to heat up again.
I would agree with this, and I would say that the cyclical nature of aviation is definitely on students' minds. It's usually the reason that students will enter a joint university or college program that's coupled with aviation training is that typically flight training and to become a pilot is their first goal. However, they are aware that with economies and world events that happen, that the aviation industry can turn down at any time, and so they do have a fallback. It's also interesting to see the recovery that we're in and the boom for aviation that we're in right now, as we're still able to talk to people who were affected by the fallout of aviation and to get their perspective on things. And they do tend to impart a bit of wariness on students to make them aware that this can happen.
In listening to the last two panels, yours and the one before, it's evident that there's a lot of diversity from the perspectives. There is one perspective that I find missing, and it's one that's close to my heart, and that's airport management. We've heard very little from the people who are going to be running the airports of tomorrow. That's a consideration that I have. I work with ACI ICAO, the International Airport Professional Program, so AMPOP for those of you who know. And we are developing an international accreditation, no, not accreditation, designation for airport managers. And one of the concerns that we have is, I'll be honest, being a pilot, sexy. Being an air traffic controller, awesome. What do you do in an airport? And so this might actually be a question that you may or may not be able to answer. I know it's a little bit of an unfair question for this panel because you figured out what you want to do, but I'm trying to understand what our industry is doing to attract people to work in airports. Is it something that you working, looking at aviation in general, or something that you're considering? Because I haven't heard the word airport once today. So I'm just kind of wondering who's going to be running our airports tomorrow.
From a point of view of maybe younger students, so from, I'll talk about the Air Cadets, so from the age of 12 to 18, I'd say that growing up with the aviation industry all around me, I'd say that it's unknown to young citizens. So at the age of 12, like you said, pilot is being sexy, and even air traffic controller, sometimes they think it's the marshaller, where I talk to someone, air traffic controller, he does this to me, like it's marshalling. So even air traffic control is unknown to some youngsters. So what I say, the Air Cadet program has a 6-week course that's based on airport handling, and it covers all of the careers, but it also focuses on teaching as part of its mandatory training program that there's a lot of other careers. And as part of the aviation day that we have, we introduce to the cadets all of the careers, and we really state the fact, and this at a really young age, that everything's important. And if you had a pilot with no engineers and with no one to run the airports, then the airplane wouldn't fly. So I think that the main key for the students that are outside such program is for the industry to show and have key aspects how to make these careers known to young students. What are the careers that are associated with airport handling? What is an air traffic control? And to detail how fun it can be and how needed it is in the aviation industry. I don't know if you want to add anything?
So I've spoken with some recent graduates from their undergrad. Usually they're engineers or something similar, something very project management, very logistical focused. And when they're trying to figure out what they're doing, if it's not quite what their discipline is that they went to school for, and they're looking around for jobs there a little bit, is that airports doesn't usually tend to come up, and it only usually comes up in discussion with me because they know my ties to the industry. And I do try to help out when I can, but the issue is that I don't really know where to direct people. Because of my proximity to Toronto right now, the best I could do would be to refer people to the GTAA, the Greater Toronto Airport Authority, but at that point, that's the best I can do. So for many people, it's just they don't really know about the career paths, or if they know about it, they don't know how they can go about entering the industry.
Okay, we've we've come to the end of our time. I'd like to thank you for those questions. They were very, very interesting and allowed us to explore even more the perspective of the student when we're looking at aviation careers. Suzanne, thank you, and thank you to your panel for a very lively and refreshing presentation. Excellent. Thank you so much. So in a few moments, we have a treat for you. As we get ready, I invite the panel to take your seats in the assembly halls so you have a good view of the next presentation as we set it up and as I see our guest coming up the aisle and soon coming up the stairs.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and pleasure to be here at the NGAP Summit to celebrate the next generation and also the conclusion of the DreamSoar global flight. To sum it all up, we did it. For those of you who are unfamiliar with DreamSoar, DreamSoar is a nonprofit organization set out to inspire the next generation of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and aviation professionals. Phase 1 of DreamSoar, it was, for me, the pilot of this aircraft, which is a Beechcraft Bonanza, to fly solo around the world to inspire the next generation of STEM and aviation professionals. On May 13th of this year, I departed from Daytona Beach, Florida, to fly a total of 30 stops in 22 countries across 5 continents by myself to inspire, to bring the message of STEM and aviation education to young children. Although this flight was a solo flight around the world, I had an amazing team on the ground working around the clock to make sure that the fuel, the logistics, the airports were all informed of my arrival. And this was very difficult, especially when you factor in the different weather delays around the world, especially in Asia during monsoon season. And it was just wonderful to have the Dream team, the DreamSoar team, work very closely with ICAO and the council members to ensure that the trip around the world, with all of its unexpected delays and weather challenges, would run as smoothly as possible. One of our biggest partnerships that allowed DreamSoar to successfully fly around the world to inspire the next generation is ICAO. And the heart of ICAO, the heart of those who helped just have me propel forward around the world, were the council members who all stepped in and chipped in to make sure that we were effectively inspiring the next generation. And boy, was the next generation inspired. This picture was taken here in Montreal during one of the outreach events that was co-hosted by ICAO and Seretis Aviation. Around the world, I got to personally meet 3,000 children face to face. 3,000 children from around the world got to see my aircraft up close and hear my story of how I came from a refugee camp in Afghanistan, grew up in a family of 6 girls, wasn't so good in school, but managed to rise above all of that, become a pilot, become a commercial pilot, get a bachelor's and a master's degree, proving to young girls and boys that the odds can be against you, but you can still succeed. As long as you believe in your dreams, you work hard. And any sort of dream, it's rarely accomplished solo. It really does take a team to have any dream come true of any individual. I'd like to share with you a quick video that just highlights the different countries that I had the pleasure of visiting. And again, it was through the partnership of ICAO where the council members and the Dream Soar team really worked closely together to take advantage of this platform of me flying solo around the world in a plane, taking advantage of that opportunity and sharing it with children and making them feel a part of this global trip around the world. So if I can have your attention for a few minutes just to give you a brief highlight of the trip.
There is one young woman here who is reaching new heights and inspiring people along the way.
So come May, early spring of next year, I'm going to be flying this Bonanza around the world.
Meet Shasta Ways, founder and president of Dreams Soar. She's here at base to share her inspirational story of going from a refugee camp to being the first female civilian pilot from Afghanistan.
Thank you. So a little bit about the trip. I departed on May 13th from Daytona Beach, Florida, in the Beechcraft Bonanza, set out to fly around the world solo, and upon completing the trip, I hold the world record of being the youngest woman to fly solo around the world in a single-engine, piston-powered aircraft. To do something this courageous, you really have to have a strong purpose for doing something like flying by yourself in a single-engine airplane across oceans and just terrain that I've never seen in my life, different weather patterns. To do this, you really have to have a strong purpose. And for me, every time I started the engine and got ready to go land in another country, I kept thinking about those children that I had already met, the children who had written to Dream Soar and I about how excited they are that I'm embarking on this journey, and thinking about the children that are waiting for me in the countries that lie ahead of me. One of the most remarkable moments on this trip was my first ocean crossing. I took off from St. John's, Canada, Newfoundland, going across the Atlantic Ocean down to the Azores in Portugal. And after 9 hours of sitting in my seat and hearing my one little engine running, it dawned on me that in the history of aviation, there has only been 7 women who have ever crossed this ocean solo. And I would have never believed that a refugee, a woman from Afghanistan, one who was extremely shy growing up, one who thought that I'm not going to do anything special in life, and probably the best life that I could have is to get married and have a family. Would be the 8th woman to cross this ocean solo. And I share this with you all because the beauty of aviation is that when you set your heart to something in this very passionate field, it doesn't matter what your challenges or what your backgrounds are. Being in an aircraft will forever propel you forward. And that's the mentality that we all should have when we sit here and discuss the next generation. Nothing is impossible. And by working together and working in this very passionate field of aviation, we are always going to be moving forward. My message to the next generation is to be bold, be confident, and be creative. My passion started in aviation by wanting to become an airline pilot. And I would have never expected for me to be the founder and president of a nonprofit organization and to fly solo around the world, all to inspire the next generation. Whatever your most wildest dreams are, go after them. And here's the great thing. There really is no age limit on when you can go after your dreams. And if you have a great mission to keep you energized and keep you motivated to cross these oceans, then you are going to set yourself up for a great flight path. Another message to the next generation is that if you just look at the airline industry, there are so many airliners taking off to go to a specific destination. And each airplane has a different flight path. When I say be bold, be confident, be creative, just know that there's more than one way to getting to your destination. I had initially started out with a flight plan for this trip around the world, and due to, like I said, weather delays, some changes in fuel availability, I had to alter my flight plan. And it was just so amazing to have ICAO, IATA, ACI, CANSO all working together to make sure that if there were any changes in the flight route, that it was okay, that we would all work together to ensure that the outreach events around the world would be as smooth as possible, along with my arrivals and departures to each country. So again, just highlighting, it was 30 stops, 22 countries across 5 continents, and I got to meet face-to-face 3,000 children and sharing the message of STEM and aviation to these kids. But most importantly, we inspired hundreds of thousands through social media, young children and adults all following the trip around the world. I really want to take this opportunity and thank everyone involved, especially the council members, the Secretary General, ICAO's president, and the staff for believing in a young girl who came here to her first NGAP meeting 3 years ago with a dream. And because everyone worked together, this dream grew. And yes, it was a solo flight around the world, but this would not have been done without the team effort. It takes a village to raise a child, and it takes a village to get one person to go around the world. A special thank you to a great mentor, friend, and also advisory council member to Dream Soar, Captain Aisha Al-Hamali. She has been just such a great advocate, cheerleader, mentor, friend. She was texting me during the trip around the world, and a lot of the success that we have today is shared due to Aisha and just everyone here at ICAO. So thank you very much. Some lessons learned. The next generation is waiting for us. And it is so great to be here at NGAP and exchanging these ideas and having this discussion. As someone who has just traveled the world and seen children face to face, they have their ears are open, their eyes are open, and they want to learn more. And it's exciting to be a part of this summit and these conversations so that we can really better serve the next generation and ensure that we have a healthy foundation to sustain this industry ahead of us. Borders, that's probably the second biggest lesson that I've learned, is when you are in the air, when I was flying around the world, I would see the borders of different countries on my GPS. And I'd look outside hoping that, or not hoping, but expecting to see maybe some sort of divide between two countries as I was flying over them. And to my surprise, I realized there are no borders. Borders are man-made. And unfortunately, because of these man-made borders, there are children that go uneducated and children who don't have opportunities. It's best to look at ourselves as one. The world is one. We are all one. We all have the same mindsets, the same way of thinking. And we shouldn't distinguish ourselves so much from one another, because at the end of the day, we are all very much the same. I noticed this when I met the girls in Greece. They were no different from the girls in Afghanistan. And the girls from Afghanistan were no different from the girls in Indonesia. Human race is human race. We are all the same. We do have our differences as far as the languages that we speak, but at the end of the day, we should embrace all being one. And that was one of the biggest lessons that I learned, is through the pilot's perspective, the world is one. There really are no borders unless you look down at your GPS that tells you the divide in countries. And the last one is that teamwork makes the dream work. And it's amazing to see all of these different organizations here today working together. I understood this concept that teamwork is important, but sure enough, as I'm in Christmas Island, which is kind of an isolated island just south of Hawaii, where there's really no cell reception, and the power goes out every day from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, knowing that there was a team behind me working around the clock, it just gave me a better definition of what teamwork really meant. Again, a special thank you to ICAO and all of the participating civil aviation authorities who stepped in and made each stop very special. Phase 2 of Dream Soar, we would like to continue our outreach efforts. There are many countries that I wasn't able to go into, and I'm excited to, as we kick the next phase of Dream Soar, is to not travel solo. It's so nice to have people travel with you. But the Dream Soar team hopes to continue our outreach efforts around the world to inspire the next generation through STEM. And I think that although it's not part of the global trip around the world, it's part of a global effort that we hope to continue. Dream Soar is launching a scholarship campaign. So if you are following us on social media and our newsletters, you'll see that we are actively working very hard to not only, now that we've inspired 3,000 kids and hundreds of thousands through social media and media, we want to now enable these kids and provide them opportunities regardless if you are a boy, a girl, your religion, what country you're from, your social background. Any child in any part of the world can apply to these scholarships that will further their education in STEM and aviation. And then just for my personal note, going to Afghanistan and seeing all the young girls who were there and looking at me as a role model, it is my goal to go back and to start a STEM school in Afghanistan where young girls can come and work on STEM-related projects to better the country and to make them feel empowered and make them feel like they are a part of something bigger. To conclude my speech today, with the partnership of ICAO, we were able to name the Beechcraft Bonanza that I flew around the world. And I think this is a good opportunity to reveal the name if you all don't know of it yet, but it's Dreamcatcher. And I think this aircraft that I have flown around the world with, although it's a piece of machinery, to me it's very sentimental, and I felt like as I was going around the world, it was a way of catching people's dreams and attention, and that's the official name, which we had a competition going. It was a young girl from India who selected the name, and we all voted on it and came up with the name Dreamcatcher. So again, thank you all for your attention. Thank you all for your participation. It is wonderful to be back here at ICAO's headquarters and just really celebrating not only the next generation, but all of the hard work we all put in to make DreamSoar so successful. If you want to learn more about the DreamSoar flight, it's not every day you get to see yourself on the cover of a magazine, but the ICAO training report, there's an article that I help write that just kind of highlights the trip, and you can learn more online through dreamsoar.org. So thank you all again.
Thank you so much, Shasta. That was a very, very inspiring presentation. We take a few messages from what you were saying. Be bold, be confident, be creative, and this applies to everyone. Plans can change. What is important is reaching your destination. Borders do not exist. They are man-made. We are one. And teamwork makes the dream work. So again, thank you so much. If we're looking for a cause to support, this is it. Thank you again for being such an extraordinary ambassador for the next generation of aviation professionals. Thank you and bon voyage. I'm sure Shasta will be at the coffee break to chat with us and answer any questions we might have. The coffee break is sponsored by Valair. We invite you to network and again talk to our exhibitors, and we'll see you back here in 23 minutes and a half, okay, at 3:45. Thank you so much. See you soon.